told you to quiet down, but now you wear a crown. Visionary queen with a spark.
Welcome to You Matter in Business with Ariel Faith, your brand, your story, and your success, because you matter in your business. Welcome back to You Matter in Business. I wanted to talk today about the empty nest syndrome. A lot of times we hear people talk about that when you have been raising children for 20, 30, 40, sometimes even longer. Some people end up with grandchildren too, but that's such a part of who you are and your worth and what you really enjoy out of life. When you have children, you really do enjoy the good days. But then sometimes you'll hear people talk like like they have to mourn their children, like it's a loss, and different cultures are a little different with this. But it's interesting that other people see it kind of like a liberation. I know I expected to have kind of a liberation when my youngest daughter turned 18. I don't know why, but I just expected this to be, because I had her when I was 40, so you can do the math. And at that point, it was actually more sad than expected. I expected to be like, finally. But it was really kind of weird. So I just wanted to talk about that because it's a challenging time of life for a lot of women for a lot of different reasons. And it's an odd thing. It doesn't make any sense from a logical standpoint, but because some people think it's a loss, some people call it liberation. I kind of experienced both, but what is it about the time when our children grow up and are off on their own? They're off to college, they're off on their own, they're having their own families. What is it that happens to the mom, right? The woman who might have been running a business the whole time, but all of a sudden this shift in her role. Is it that all of a sudden you now have time so you can think more about the troubles, or we become a little less patient, I've noticed. We don't want to deal with junk as much of the, BS of the universe. We just don't have time for it. And I also think that we see a lot of women getting out of their careers, their stable careers, and entering entrepreneurship during this phase. It's an incredible amount of women who have done it. And that's really when a lot of them really grow to success, because they don't have as much at home to use their resources. So now they can use all the strengths and resources that they had, they can use to then help whoever they're helping through their business. Why is empty nest syndrome, why does it hit different when you're building a business? You think about that, the whole identity shift from mom first to a whole woman. What does that really mean? Those parts of yourself that they were sleeping almost because they needed to. The part of you that wanted to succeed, the part of you that was slightly ambitious or maybe majorly ambitious, but you had to have a dual role because you had very precious children that you wanted to make sure that job was so important. And you wanted to make sure that you did that one well, because that is a part-time job. You only get it for 20 years. You get to be yourself forever. So when you watch your clients navigate through this transition and you see them, I think of one of my clients who, beautiful, beautiful soul, and she was struggling to find herself after this. Both of her children were in college and she was off on an adventure, but she was very empty and felt like she needed people. She needed to help. She needed to just work. She needed something, right? There was an emptiness. And then that emptiness teaches us something. Why are we empty when we let go of our children? That's really kind of an interesting thing. And what does it tell us about ourselves? And what are we holding on to that we could let go and really enjoy life? That's the objection or the objective of going into this phase, is now you have less responsibility, but yet you have more time to develop your own personal self. You have time to develop your personal business or whatever it is you're working on. A lot of people will take up their art that they never really got to spend a whole lot of time with. They'll get back into that. I took up photography, which turned into a business. So there's a lot of ways we can find joy and fulfillment in our lives. But why is this transition such a odd age? And I say odd because there's hormonal things that are going on that just make no sense at all. And I'm not gonna lie, it's just cruelty. Going from freezing cold to flaming for no apparent reason just makes no sense. And unless you've experienced that, you don't understand how crazy that is. And obviously that affects all your relationships because when you're having one of those heat moments, you don't even want somebody to touch you. So, snuggles aren't always really welcome at that particular moment. I mean, they pass so you can, get back to snuggles, but it's just, there's all these things going on. Then you have all this, this self-doubt seems to really creep in and this imposter syndrome during this phase because it's almost like we lose who we are. And I kind of have a theory about this. I think we do lose sight of it, maybe some of us, but I think what we find is the real woman who's been there all along.
Behind the lens, crafting tales and news.
Bring your marketing, your brand to life with storytelling and strategy. Cut through the noise with clear messaging and compelling visuals that resonate with your ideal client. We bring strategy, story, and visuals to help you with your marketing. Visit arieljoyfaith.com and schedule a consultation and see how we can help you bring your brand to life.
Selfies here, just genuine sight. Authenticity in every life.
They talk about that child, the inner child in therapy. And I really have a very strong belief that inner child is really it's just you. It's the same you that's been there since you were born. So that is you. And at this stage in life, you almost get to put those two pieces together because you hopefully have healed some of those childhood wounds. You understand what they are. You threw away a lot of the garbage that got attached to that. So hopefully you've done some of that work in your life. But now you're at this stage where you're just looking at the future, knowing it's limited in this world, right? And you know that you're going to get older and less mobile and hopefully not. And you keep moving and you keep doing all these things, but you have this sense of wonder, like, what's possible. And you also have that sense of curiosity and that child that wanted to play that may not have been able to or whatever, that part of you is still there wanting to play. They just want to travel the world and see places and go places. And of course, all that takes money. So therefore you need to work. So it's this cycle of exploration that we did when we were children. But I really think we get back into that. Or successful adults. I don't know if I should label it successful. That's my opinion, is when we really can find that part of ourselves that we've always seen and always loved, but we just had different labels along your life. And that's kind of like, to me, it's a purpose awakening. It's kind of like you have had this piece of you that's been there all along and kind of guiding and pushing and pulling and you haven't identified it per se. You start to, as you get a little older, you start to deal with things. And then when you're at this phase where you no longer have, 1, 2, 4 people to take care of, in addition to yourself and your home and your job and everything else, you now have the time to really say, hey, I remember you. You were fun. Let's go play. I mean, I actually took a trip several months or several weeks. It wasn't several months across the north on the northeast coast of the United States. because I'm in Florida. So I went all the way up to Maine and I did a solo trip. It was a cart trip. And it was incredibly fun. And I was shocked by that because I did it as I knew my children were going to be gone. And I'm like, I need to learn to have fun by myself because they've always gone with me. Adventures and kids are like, that's fun. But now it's like, all right, well, if I don't have anybody to go on an adventure with, I might as well do it myself. So I did. And it really taught me a whole lot of things. One, I wasn't alone because I have a very strong belief in God. So I traveled literally with God and sang songs pretty much the whole time, and I had a ball. I played in his world where climbed mountains and looked for bizarre ocean creatures, and I just had fun. And it's what life is supposed to be like. We don't need to do anything at this point in our life, but we may want to. We have decades of life experience, and that becomes almost a secret weapon, not only in business, but in our personal relationships and in helping others, because we have walked many different paths at this stage. And there's a difference between needing to serve and wanting to serve or choosing to serve. And we get to make those choices. Before we had to serve to take care of our family. I mean, we didn't. Obviously, there are some who don't, which is very sad. But, the women that are listening to this podcast are growth oriented, or they wouldn't probably be sitting in here, or they want to be. So these are the women that want to be better and to grow and to keep growing. But what's crazy is sometimes when you're at that stage, you start to feel guilty because you start to feel selfish. Like you're spending too much time on yourself. You're like, it was selfish of me to go on that trip alone. Actually, it was very therapeutic for me to go on that trip alone, which is actually why I did it. But I knew that. Do people around me know that? No, but that's okay. They don't need to. But so sometimes what looks like being selfish is really about taking that time to rediscover who you have been and what strengths you want to take through the next 10 years, next 20 years. And in that expectations that other people might put on you, and they have a lot of well, you should be, we should just stop with the should word, number one, and have the courage to maybe disappoint some people along the way. You can't live up to everybody else's expectations. And it's really our values that drive us. So when we know we've worked years to develop good core values, we have a very kind, caring soul, then we should not allow the opinion of others to affect that value-driven work or the value-driven service that we might choose to do later on in life. If we did what we were supposed to do, whatever that is, and that varies by culture, versus what we may choose to do, there's really a disconnect there. And we've been dealing with that as women since we were children. Who learned to help mom clean the dishes? Was it the sons or was it the daughters? There's just been a gender thing all these years. So at this point in our life, and we may have mates and we may have to try to, work through this phase because it is a little challenging, even for the man, because he doesn't understand what's going on. Neither does the woman for some of it. So just give us a break for a little while. But on the other side of it, you'll like us. You'll like us better than you did before. That's my theory on the matter if you happen to be a male listening to this podcast. Next episode, I want to dive into the moment when this may sound like an odd thing, your soul says yes, but all those fears are like, no, not yet. Like you keep from moving forward because there's some fears that's going on. We talk a lot about that on this podcast, but I'm going to keep talking about it because it's one of those things that fear is just a part of life and it hits us at different stages, different times, and very much at this is a transitional stage. There are a lot of fears. I was very afraid to go on that trip. I'm not going to lie. But it didn't take me long to not have that fear. And there were times when it was a little spooky. I Sometimes when you're on the road by yourself, there's some creepy people out there and you have to really be careful. So there's a difference between being stupid and being able to do things on your own and have some fun. So that's what I want to talk about next time is when your soul is saying yes to something, but your fears are in the way. They're stopping you. So, just as a little bit of reflection, a simple question that you might ask yourself is what part of you is ready to emerge in this season? And if you're in this transition and want to explore how your wisdom has become your work, can you do that? Because the truth is, this isn't about what you're losing, it's about what you are becoming. So use this transition as a moment of absolute discovery and find the woman that you've loved all these years. See you next episode. After all, it is your brand, your story, and your success because I know that you matter in business. Thank you for listening to You Matter in Business podcast. Please follow, share, like, and comment. I would love to hear from you. This podcast is sponsored by Ariel Faith Storytelling Marketing and Your Brand Photographer. The show notes provide more information on how to contact Ariel and more information about this episode. Thank you again.
They told you to quiet down, but now you wear a crown. Visionary queen with a spark, lighting up the dark. Rediscover your own fire, chase the dreams that lift you higher. Redefine your role today, brand new in every way. Build your confidence through my lens, break the walls you put up since. Embrace your power, hear your roar. You are meant for so much more. You are meant for so much more.